So Bostrom basically lays out these three options and says you got to pick one of these three doors.
Yeah.
Either door one is we never get to the point where we can actually create a simulation that would be, so realistic that beings like us could inhabit it and think it's the real world. So that's
Right.
option one. It's just not technologically feasible, possible. Option two is that, the technology does appear, but we're conscientious enough, or we have some sort of inhibiting reason that prevents us from creating such a simulation and populating it.
Mm-hmm.
And then option three is that we can do it, and we will do it, and therefore I suppose we have done it, or someone, it's not we, but someone right. like us has done it, and that would have happened. I think the idea is that it would happen recursively, so that you would have a simulation, and then within the simulation, the same principles apply to the simulation within the simulation.
Right, all the way down. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Sort of Inception style
mm-hmm.
Simulations all the way down, or at least there comes a point when there are more simulations than there are of all the worlds that exist. The simulated worlds far outnumber the singular real world, or the base reality, and therefore probabilistically we are in one of those simulated worlds rather than the real world.
Yeah. Are we able to just deny premise one by saying, I don't believe in strong AI? I think that Searle's Chinese Room just totally destroys the idea that there can be a simulated consciousness. So then I just affirm one and say we're not living in a computer simulation?
Well, one thing I did in the original blog post, as you know, was to distinguish different conceptions of a simulation. Yeah. And I laid out three basic options. One is the Sims option, where it is just a computer game and it's fictional characters in a computer game. And that one you can write off right away because the characters don't even exist. The second view would be the Matrix view, where we exist outside the matrix, but we're plugged into it. So it's just our experiences that are generated, but we exist outside it. And then the third option is the we are completely generated by some computer. So we're basically conscious simulations running on some computer. So we have some physical realization, but this physical realization gives rise to a conscious mind, which has experiences that are of this simulated world. And really, I think, well, I guess Bostrom's proposal, or his argument, is assuming the third scenario, where there is a computer system within which conscious beings come into existence. That presumably, if you think that consciousness is an emergent property of material things, as many naturalists argue that the mind is just an emergent property or an emergent phenomenon from matter, then that could happen with a computer system as well. You could get a computer that has the right kind of circuitry, the right kind of functional connections, so that it actually gives rise to a mind, a consciousness, a first-person perspective. And to circle back to the question, I think there are pretty compelling philosophical arguments against the metaphysical possibility of that. Not that it's technologically beyond our ken, but that metaphysically you can't get mind and consciousness out of a purely material substrate. One argument would be Searle's Chinese Room argument against functionalism. If a computer is essentially just a machine that is processing symbols, it's purely functional in its connections, basically a Turing machine, then a machine like that, while it can simulate human reasoning, some kinds of human reasoning, it cannot actually, it doesn't think in the way that a human being does. It doesn't have as I think Searle puts it, it doesn't have the semantic aspect of thought. It might have the syntactical aspect, but not the semantic aspect. And so it's not really thinking. It's not actually having any mental content. A computer doesn't actually know what it's doing. It's not aware of what it's doing. It doesn't have any intentions. And therefore, it's not, a machine could not give rise to that kind of thought process that we have. I think there's also, in addition to that, the problem of subjectivity, namely that material entities have certain kinds of properties, the sort of properties that scientists measure, like mass and extension and velocity and so forth. And these are very different kinds of properties than the first-person subjective properties that consciousness has. Like the having of experiences, what it's like to experience such and such. Those kind of subjective features are not possessed. It's a complete category error to ascribe those to a material entity. So those are just a couple of reasons why I don't think that this sort of simulation hypothesis gets off the ground, because the scenario that it's positing is metaphysically impossible in the first place.